Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Yolitics. My partner in crime's already taking a swig here before we're even starting, man. Starting early here. So Wheeler is still catching up with his email from being off, and it's probably a mile-long to-do list. So we are having a pint today on Yolitics with none other than Chris Lawrence from WFAA, evening news anchor. Cheers, my friend. Good to see you. Dad extraordinaire. If you follow him on Instagram, I've lived here 15 years in Dallas, and he's lived here, 3 or 4 years?
3.5.
3.5, and he's done everything I haven't done, so...
Except hit all the taco spots.
Well, this episode's right up his alley. We are, shout out especially to Pegasus City Brewery here. This is the tap room, is where we are recording this episode. Downtown Dallas, 1508 Commerce Street, right next to the AT&T Global headquarters downtown. Adrian Busby coming in early for us. Thank you very much, Adrian. So now I can officially have a drink. What are you drinking, by the way?
I'm drinking Beaming Blonde because I have to work a full shift today.
It's shortly, right? Is it good? It's a lager, a blonde. Okay,
blonde. Yeah, very refreshing.
Wow, I have Cannoneer, and this is an amber. It's 7.4%, and a bold amber. That's why the bold.
My eyes aren't as good. What is mine? Mine's got to be in the 5s. I figure.
What are you having again?
Beaming Blonde.
Oh, yours is 6.4. Oh, that'll be a creative newscast tonight.
All right.
Yeah. I'll be watching.
Be sure to tune in.
Fortunately, I don't have to do that later today here. So a few months back, we did an episode on downtown Dallas's resurgence after COVID. Occupancy in downtown buildings, the high-rise office buildings, is going great. If you've been downtown at all in the past few years, you've probably seen grocery stores. That's huge for downtown Dallas because, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, downtown Dallas, especially at 4:30 or 5 p.m., turned into a ghost town. Nobody was around here. Big influx in the population in the city center. And now there's something else happening that you might have seen if you've driven through downtown. You probably passed it. You didn't know what was going on with all the development. But 4 new parks are going in, new green space. And what's cool about this, Chris, is because this used to be surface parking lots. And I like how Dallas has kind of grabbed that. But these are the latest additions to really a flurry of parks being built in the city center. And it's really changing the look and the feel of the city, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nothing sort of deadens a city like big empty lots in the middle of the city. I mean, I think it's a sign of any thriving city when you don't see that. When the parking is underground or in a garage or... and those surface spaces are thriving.
Yeah, no kidding. Just redeveloping those is a big deal. So the group behind this is Downtown Dallas Parks, Inc., and Amy Meadows is the chief executive officer, and she is having a drink with us today here. Amy, welcome to Yolitics.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What are you having over there? What is that, by the way?
I was told it was it is a shandy. I don't know what that means because I'm not a beer drinker.
You're a wine person. Right?
I'm a wine gal, right? But I wanted to take part in the spirit of the effort here, so
Shandy
I'll probably have
a very refreshing.
Okay, I'll have a sip or two, and we'll see. But I also have my glass of water.
And you have a glass of water to go with it, and then cool glassware too with the Art Deco,
cool.
the Pegasus. The Pegasus wing there at Pegasus City Brewery here. Let me ask you about this. When I was first approached with this idea, I love the idea, but I'd never heard of you guys before. City of Dallas has its own parks department. The City of Dallas has a park board. A friend of mine was on that. What in the world does your nonprofit do? It's been around for 7 years now. What's the primary purpose for you guys?
Well, Parks for Downtown Dallas is a nonprofit foundation that was created near the end of 2015. We were previously known as the Belo Foundation. And when the company was sold to Gannett, our trustees made the decision that we were going to, and we were an independent foundation, so we could spin off and we could change our focus. We had actually done some park development for the city of Dallas. We had built the original Belo Garden that opened to the city in 2012. That has recently changed its name to Civic Garden, but same location, Griffin and Main Street. And our trustees said, we're going to use all of our assets to build out the master plan. And there were 2 master plans that were created for downtown parks. One in 2004 that brought you Belo Garden, Main Street Garden, and Clyde Warren Park. And then it was updated in 2013, and there were 4 priority parks identified in that project. And that was Pacific Plaza, West End Square, Carpenter Park, and Harwood Park. So that's what we're doing. We're building those parks for the city. We're actually like a nonprofit developer as part of a public-private partnership with the city of Dallas.
And you just had the quote-unquote groundbreaking for the last of the four, right?
Correct. Harwood Park's groundbreaking was this fall, at the end of September. And it's under construction just a few blocks away from where we are right now.
Amy, I misspoke about the name of the organization.
That's
My apologies.
all right.
I was on your website,
That's all
and I was
right.
going through all kinds of stuff, watching videos, looking at the master plan, so I apologize. It's Parks for Downtown Dallas,
Correct.
Inc.
But we collaborate very closely with Downtown Dallas, Inc., and that's where I think sometimes the confusion comes in.
Those guys at Downtown Dallas,
Yeah.
Inc. So just to lay this out, I presume, like any city, they really need the public-private partnership to really make things come to fruition. That's the whole point
Correct.
of having you guys come in to actually
Correct.
get these parks off the ground?
Yes, because we had an endowment of around 40 plus million that we knew we could activate instantly. And so the city wasn't going to have to wait to get bond approval from the citizens to get more bond dollars to do these projects. Now, it is a match situation. So we put up our capital, and then the city did put it in the 2017 bond program as well.
And tell me a little bit, like, just take Harwood Park, for example. What did it take politically, business-wise, to cobble that together?
Well, Harwood is unique because it was not land that the city owned, and it hadn't been on the previous plan. So there was a bond program in '06 that allocated funding for land purchase for Pacific Plaza and Weston Square. Carpenter was already a plaza that the park department had dedicated in 1981, but it wasn't a park that anyone could access because it was actually bisected by streets. So it was almost like a park for cars, as you drove through. Harwood was brand new to the field, and I think we had 14 different parcels of land that we had to purchase.
Wow.
We began purchasing those properties in 2014 when we were actually the Bilo Foundation, because we were watching what was happening here in downtown, and we saw the demand that was happening in the real estate market here. And we thought by the time the park department finally gets this approved for, in the next bond program, which was stated to happen in 2017, this land would be probably out of the realm of possibility in terms of purchase price.
Like a developer might pick it up or be too expensive?
Exactly. That somebody else in the private sector would want to buy this property and develop it. And so we knew that the city by that point wouldn't have the resources. So we figured we'd start doing this. And so we did. And it took 4 years, but we got all of that park under our control. And then ultimately, last year in 2021, we sold that property to the city at appraised value, and they were able to use bond dollars, and those bond dollars then came to us, and we're now reinvesting those bond dollars in the construction of the park.
Let's give people a lay of the land here, too. If they're familiar with downtown Dallas, the old Bilo Gardens, now Civic Garden, is right in front of the federal courthouse downtown, right next to the Bank of America Tower, the tallest building in downtown Dallas. Pacific Plaza is right behind the Sheraton Hotel.
Correct.
And
next to One Dallas Center and
Yeah.
Republic Tower.
Right,
So-
by
Passed that
Thanksgiving
on my
Square.
drive
Did you
in.
really?
Yeah.
And I remember parking in that parking lot, which it was a parking lot that was way beyond its time. It was
Yes.
patched. It was gross.
Agreed.
But what you guys have done there is incredible. Harwood Park, tell me exactly where that is, because I know the name Harwood, I just can't place where it is downtown.
And I know there's some confusion because of the Harwood district that is being been developed on the other side of downtown. But Harwood Park is bound by Pearl Street on the east side, Young Street on the south side, Harwood Street on the west side, and Jackson Street on the north side.
What are the buildings around it? What are the landmarks?
The Scottish Rite Museum and Temple is there on the south side on Young Street, and then the Farmers Market's just a couple blocks away.
Gotcha.
On the east side is the new East Quarter District that Todd Entris has developed. On the west side is First Presbyterian Church. And then on the north side is a building under construction by Merdad Moyetti's company, who he did the Statler Hotel. So he's building some residential on the north side of the park.
So it kind of stitches these neighborhoods together to try to get a more cohesive feel to them.
Yes, and the Farmers Market District, in terms of residential, is where most of our families have moved. So we know there's a lot of interest, and they're using the new Montessori school. It's not brand new, but it's been around for a few years. It's over in the UNT Center. So we know there's going to be an interest in families coming to Harwood. So the design was influenced by that.
Let's zoom out a tad here, Amy. yeah, we all like parks. They're pretty to look at, and if we're downtown, we might take our kids there before or after a hockey game or a basketball game. Why does Dallas and why do cities really need these parks? There are real health benefits to this as well.
Certainly, mental, physical health, environmental. I think you all know that Dallas has air quality issues. And so this is one of the things about removing concrete and adding green is very helpful for a city. One of the early impetus for this was the walkability of downtown Dallas. Downtown was not known as a city where people walked. They drove in, went to their offices, and might have used the tunnels, so you didn't even see them on the streets. So
do
we
people
didn't
still use the tunnels out of curiosity?
From what I know, because our building where we office, Bank of
Yeah.
America Plaza, is connected to the tunnels, but the whole tunnel network does not exist any longer. But we can go into the tunnels and go a couple blocks over.
Yeah.
For instance, if it's raining, we might do that. But now you really don't see many people in the tunnels. People are on the streets now. It's so active.
Yeah, quick side note to that for people who don't realize that it's so hot in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Houston does this. They have an elaborate underground tunnel system that connects all the high-rise skyscrapers. And Dallas had a smaller version of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting it's not being used anymore. I interrupted you though, but there are important reasons besides just the way that downtown looks to actually develop these parks.
Right. Well, but as I was saying, the walkability issue,
Yeah.
and you could not really walk from one side of downtown to the other. And any great, wonderful city that you travel to in our country or in other countries around the world typically have green spaces that allow you to move from one side of a city to another. So that was really the impetus for it, but it's become so much more because since that original examination of downtown, which started in 2002 with the Inside the Loop Committee, after Boeing declined to come to Dallas, that effort was started by Mayor Laura Miller, and they realized there was no plan for parks in downtown Dallas. This was a commercial district, and no one had thought about people living here and playing here, going to school here. So, what are we missing if we're going to make this leap to be a live, play, work city?
And just to take folks back a little bit, because a lot of folks like me have moved here in the last 20 years, Boeing's decision not to put its headquarters in downtown Dallas, part of that came from it's just a dead zone. And they didn't feel comfortable putting a headquarters
they thought
here.
there were other cities that were far more vibrant,
Okay.
and they were going to go into an urban, core, and this was not a vibrant core because, as Courtney mentioned back in June of 2021 when you talked to her, we had 200 people living here in the late 1990s.
Wow.
That was
In all of downtown, which is
all
remarkable.
of downtown, 200 people. The current count is even more impressive than what she shared with you in June. It's now around 14,000.
Wow.
So we keep growing, and more housing is under construction right now. So more and more people are living here. I noticed a difference when I started working downtown in 2001. Was my first year downtown, but soon thereafter, the Omni Hotel opened, and I started seeing, for the first time ever, conventioneers walking all over Dallas. I hadn't seen that before. So there's been a lot of change that is bringing more people to the street level, and you want this to be a safe, pleasant experience for people to walk around Dallas.
Just to drill down on Boeing just for a moment, was Boeing kind of a come to Jesus moment here for Dallas? Did Dallas look in the mirror and say, okay, if we're going to compete with these other cities, we've got to have all the bells and whistles they have? But I don't think a park is really a bell and a whistle. It's kind of a basic piece
It does seem like a basic infrastructure need,
I
doesn't
would
it?
think. But is that what happened after the Boeing thing? Dallas said, hey, we got to up our game here.
Well, I think the Inside the Loop Committee said, what do we need to do to really make downtown Dallas vibrant? And there's development occurring all over, but what's happening here? And there were a lot of empty buildings. So what could we do that would get developers interested in coming back into the inner city here? And it's been working. I think the parks are a key component of this because it's driven additional development. So you had some pioneer developers come in and say, oh no, we're willing to commit. But it took other developers to see the changes, and the green spaces helping, I think, really motivate people. Todd Interest is a great example of that. They had redone One Dallas Center, which is on the north side of Pacific Plaza, and they saw the impact that had on their building. And so they were the ones that started the East Quarter, knowing that we were going to be building Harwood Park right at their front door.
And do you know East Quarter?
Yes.
It's right over here by Cesar Chavez. It's the far eastern edge of downtown Dallas, right before you get to Deep Ellum.
Yep.
It's great because it was kind of like a ghost town over there.
Exactly.
And in the past few years, The road infrastructure's changed. The buildings have changed. Nice big east quarter has gone up.
Yep.
On the side of one of the buildings. It's tremendous what they've done over there. Tied interests,
Right.
you said.
Yes.
And I just think too, when you talk about attracting development, the kinds of companies that would be interested in a downtown core are the kind of companies that would be embracing that live, work play ethos.
Yes.
Where they want their employees to have this vibrant lifestyle near where they're headquartered. Right. You're not going to compete with, a Frisco or a Salina that can offer however many 100 acres for a campus. That's not the kind of company that would be necessarily competing with downtown Dallas. So making downtown as livable as possible is good business.
It is good business. And I think that's why you've seen the AT&Ts and others, and small to large companies coming into downtown, because now their employees can do everything here in downtown if they wish, and they don't have to commute in. So.
But let's talk about kind of the headline of all this, and that is this whole effort has created 20 plus acres of parks in downtown Dallas over the last 20 years. No other city has really done that, huh?
As far as we know. So if there's a city in America that's done it, we haven't heard of it. So
put that in context for us. How big of a deal is that, though, Amy?
Well, we think it's pretty impressive, and we hear from other cities. I know the park department here has heard from many other cities saying, how on earth are you all doing this? And Dallas Parks and Rec will tell you they have more private partners than any of their peer park departments around the country. And there's a lot of things happening now in the green, in green space here that wasn't. When I moved here in 2001, it really didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't move here in 2001. I'm making myself much younger than I am. I moved here in the 90s. I did. I moved here in 1990. And that's so it's very. That was my first reaction. Was this is not a green focused city at all, and it was odd to me having come from Austin, where people built things around trees or a beetle or a bird or et cetera.
That is so awesome.
It was just a very different environment, and it was we scrape everything and we put the one tree where we want it, right? Since that time, there has been a huge change in Dallas's focus on green and embracing it. And it's been interesting to see in the philanthropic sector in particular, where this was not, there really wasn't a funding community that was engaged around bringing more green space or doing environmental grant making in Dallas. That has changed dramatically since the early 90s. And now we're seeing all sorts of organizations pop up, and that's why I think the Dallas Park and Rec Department now has so many partners when they didn't have those 20 years ago.
And you think, how many mayors, council members, Lord knows how many council members this process has gone through over the years.
Yes, because the city council had to approve, the park board first, and then the city council had to approve the 2004 plan, and then they had to approve the 2013 plan before we could proceed with any of these plans. So they had to buy into it.
And what's the reason for all the benefactors and the companies wanting to invest in parks? Is it to help the city develop even more, to attract the Boeings? Is that the reason they're making an investment here? Is that it?
Well, I think that's a huge piece of this. As our chairman Robert Deckard says a lot, capital protects capital. And with the investment that's come into downtown, these companies want to make sure that this was a good investment on their behalf, and so they're looking around to say, how can we be better partners in making sure downtown is really secure and is primed and positioned for the future. It's also kind of from a broader city perspective about the tax revenues. So as we improve the infrastructure here in downtown and all the development that's coming in, the tax base is increasing. And those tax revenues are not being funneled directly back into downtown. They go into the entire city of Dallas. So it's a win, too, to have a strong core for the entire city. It's not just, what within the freeway loop, as we say, because that's our geography that we're focused on is within the freeway loop. But the monies that are raised here through taxes go to the entire city of Dallas.
That's a good point. That's a real good point. I don't think you were here yet, but Clyde Warren Park is the downtown park I think a lot of people are familiar with. And it was, it's kind of revolutionary, I think, when a park was built on top of a downtown freeway. That was a game changer for a lot of folks. It became a destination. It was public and private, which was kind of a big deal at the time. It seemed to have a much bigger rollout there's another deck park being built just south of the skyline on Interstate 35 near the Dallas Zoo. Is that going to rival the Clyde Warren Park? And when is that one going to open? Because I live kind of close to it.
Right. Well, I should not speak on behalf of Southern Gateway Deck Park, but I think April Allen would love to talk with you about this.
We'll let you speak, though. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I do know that it is a park that is designed for that community, and it's the landscape architect who designed Southern Gateway also did Pacific Plaza, and he lives in the Oak Cliff area, so they couldn't have picked a better landscape architect to do that park. Chuck McDaniel is his name, and he really
He's got skin in the game.
He does, and he gets it. But you cannot duplicate, I think, any one of these parks, and that's what makes them unique.
Right?
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You want them to all be different, and so Clyde Warren, had their landscape architecture firm, but that was also, as you said, really unique. And there are cities across America now that call the Dallas Park System and said, "Tell us how you did this." And it wasn't easy because you're working with multiple government entities. Our parks, the 4 that we're developing, and then in Civic Garden that we did before, we had a different landscape architect for each one of those parks too. So they look and they feel different, but they're also responding to the neighborhoods that they're in. And that's what these parks should all do, is they should look around, what's around them, what's the culture, what are the businesses, is this residential, who are you catering to at this time, but also think for the future, what's going to happen in terms of development.
And I think Clyde Warren is so unique in that I think you said it best, Jason, it's a destination.
It is.
I mean, people drive down from Frisco
Right.
when my dad or my brother's in town. We go down there for picnics. We take the dog to the dog park. We sit out there for the outdoor movies. It's a place to show off to other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an amazing space. But I think about the parks that we use every day, and I live in East Dallas. I go to White Rock Lake
sure.
probably 4 to 5 times a week. So I think that's the difference in terms of the parks that you use every day that are sort of entrenched in a neighborhood versus a park that has all this programming and is a destination
Right.
in and of itself.
And that's very true. And that we call ours neighborhood parks for that reason. They really are, because downtown has different districts within the freeway loop. And so we try, to examine the neighborhood around us to say that should influence the design of this park and what's in this park. And so that's why when I mentioned Harwood and the families living in the Farmers Market District, the whole southern half of Harwood is going to be devoted to families. We're going to have a sport court, 2 giant Colombian mammoth play structures, multiple swings. There's going to be a water play area.
Basketball court.
Well, the sport court is designed to accommodate basketball, but more importantly, pickleball. And I'm sure you've all heard about pickleball now. It's the rage across the country. And so the park department here gets more requests for pickleball courts than anything else right now, because it is truly the rage.
Well, what?
Yes.
What?
It's a big thing.
It's a very big thing.
it's a
And
very
I
big
just heard a
thing.
story about this on National Public Radio, where they talked
What?
about it's a combination of ping pong, wiffle ball, and badminton. All of those things together. And this is the rage across the country, and you can even go pro now in pickleball.
You can go pro in it.
So
There's a circuit.
we're going to have a pickleball court here in downtown Dallas.
The last time I tried to make a reservation, Whiteley's name was on 3 time slots in a row. I couldn't even get in.
Well, Wheeler would have us believe rollerblading is still a big deal, and now pickleball might outshine that. I zoomed out a few minutes ago. We took a left turn, and we've been driving down that road for a while. Let's come back to the priority parks here. Another one you guys are developing is Carpenter Park. I like this one. This is neat because it's space. It's not just a parking space. It's space that developers really wouldn't use. It's like near freeways, under freeway overpasses. Tell us where this one is, how big of a deal it is, and when this one's going to open.
Well, the exciting thing is it's going to open May 3rd. So, and this
Really
has been
close.
a park that's, yes, very close. Maybe a little too close for us right now. This has been a park that's been in the works a long time. And I mentioned that it was actually dedicated as John W. Carpenter Plaza in 1981. And it had 3 parcels of land that were bisected by a whole bunch of streets. And so really, I don't think people even knew it was a park because you couldn't get to it by foot. You would only see it as you were zipping through. It's on the eastern side of downtown. So I-345 and Cesar Chavez, I-345 elevated, Cesar Chavez at the ground level is on the east side. So East Dallas, Deep Ellum, it will be a connector. On the north side is Live Oak. On the west side is Pearl, which has been realigned. For those of you that remember, Pearl was kind of wacky in that area and kind of uncomfortable to drive on. So that has been completely realigned. And then on the southern side is Pacific Avenue. Across the south of the park, on the other side of Pacific, are surface lots. All surface lots on that side. Okay. Then you got on the east side, over in the Deep Ellum side, is a storage facility, right? On the north side is Old Dallas High that Matthews Southwest has redone, and it's office space. But they've also just built or are finishing up a tower that's going to be residential. So we're really excited about that. Kind of catty corner is the Sheraton Hotel, which has more guest rooms than any other hotel in Texas, is my understanding.
What? The Sheraton?
It's huge. It's
more like than the Anatole, or?
Well, it's got 1,800, or more than 1,800, so it's bigger than the Anatole. And then on the west side is the DART East Transfer Center. Yeah. So if that kind of helps people, orient themselves to where this is located, it's most of the folks that are really familiar with the site. It's because they come into downtown that way, maybe off Central, and they're coming in on Cesar Chavez. So if you haven't, if you don't come into the east side of downtown, you probably don't even know this was happening.
Yeah.
And because of COVID. Texas did not stop construction. We just kept going. We broke ground on this park in September of 2020. We had a very tiny groundbreaking because we were obviously in the middle of COVID at the time. So I'm not sure most people really knew this was underway, but it is 5.6 acres, which will make it the largest park in downtown, all contiguous land. And part of it is under I-345, the elevated freeway, which we think is an exciting opportunity to do something in the shade when you think about Texas. So the first public basketball court in downtown has been built in Carpenter Park underneath the overhead freeway.
Say that again?
The first public basketball court in downtown Dallas. Will open
all of downtown.
In all of downtown. Will open May 3rd.
That makes no sense.
Well, there are basketball courts in the neighborhoods that surround downtown, but not in downtown. So this is why I think, it was a big deal to get a basketball.
Can Chris get on the reservation?
No, he's going to have to go to the sport court at Hartwood Park to play pickleball. This one will not be. This is only going to be striped for basketball. That's it. That's it.
AB, do you worry at all about the accessibility of Carpenter with the DART transit transfer station right there, and then sort of in the shadow of 345 and the construction that could be going on 345 in the years to come? That
honestly, no, I don't have any concerns because this park is designed that it can be flexible depending on what happens to I-345. I also know that a lot of the people who are really huge proponents of tearing down I-345 are big proponents of parks, and so they want this park there. So this park is going to remain. It could be modified in the future once a decision is made on what happens with I-345. And in fact, there was a phase 2 that was originally designed on the land that sits between the northbound and southbound Cesar Chavez lanes, but there just wasn't enough financial resources to do that. So that also could be something in the future, depending on what they make the decision, around 345. DART, I can't predict what DART's going to do there, but it does, provide transit in if you wanted to take a bus into Carpenter, for instance. But ultimately, DART may decide that they want to sell that for investment purposes because that land is only going to go up in value. We know that any land adjacent to a park that is maintained, well kept, goes up in value.
Are you guys going to buy it?
No. No. We're not in land acquisition we've bought all the land we need to buy.
Mentioning maintenance is a big deal because aren't you guys set up to where you will help maintain these parks, these 4 priority parks in downtown Dallas?
We have a goal to raise $50 million in endowment funding to help supplement the park department's maintenance budget.
Gotcha.
We will have these endowments under our umbrella. But we plan to use these to help assist because O&M money in a city budget is, year to year, very flexible. The park department can access capital through bond projects and the bond programs that come up periodically, but they can't get O&M money that way. So we know that we need to be the backstop to ensure that these parks are maintained at high quality. because we also know that a park that isn't maintained and is left to its own devices becomes a liability, not an asset.
Yeah,
and we want to make sure these are assets.
I've seen that. I've lived in Chicago, Brooklyn, DC, LA, and you can really tell the difference between what a park does when it's well maintained and vibrant, and when the people start to empty out and the park gets run down. It's a blight.
Right.
It's almost worse than having a surface lot.
Yeah. And we don't want that to happen. And these parks are designed and built basically for 100 years. So we've used top materials, very like granite, for instance, instead of soft stone that will degrade over time. You can go to Civic Garden, and that's 10 years. We'll have its anniversary next month, and it looks great in terms of the quality of the granite.
10 years. Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, it looks fantastic.
It opened May of 2012.
Let me throw this out, and I know it's not your park, but Clyde Park, fantastic park. We've been giving praise to it, but there's no parking. There's no parking here, and I realize that you guys are wanting to get rid of surface lots so people can go down and have something to do. But is there going to be parking at any of these priority parks you guys are developing?
Well, none of them have dedicated parking. Okay, put it that way. But there's parking in the areas around all of these parks because there are lots that people have or garages that people have, and they make them available. Now, and then there are meters in some of these areas too. And I will say Carpenter will have a few metered spaces that are along Pearl Street. So there will be, that will be an option if you get there first and you get a meter, But you can park at the Sheraton in their conference center garage. There, as I mentioned, there are three, maybe four surface lots right south of Pacific from Carpenter. So Carpenter has parking around it. There's also another huge garage that sits between Carpenter and Harwood. First Presbyterian Church has a garage that they are now offering a very, very low parking rate, daily rate for people
You've
to park there.
You've had this question before, I can tell.
No, well, I get it a lot. Yeah, exactly.
You had the answer ready for that.
I've never heard quite the litany of parking availability.
We get asked that
we
question a lot.
some questions, but not on that one. Amy was ready for that one. That's the one they trained her on.
And Clyde Ward's just such a unique thing because it's right along the highway, right on the freeway, obviously, and you've got the food trucks lined up on both sides.
And we'll have food trucks at Carpenter, but they'll be they'll be on. We have dedicated lanes on the Cesar Chavez side. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
Let me ask you about something because you work with a guy named Robert Deckard.
Yes, I do.
And Robert Deckard,
he's our chairman.
For folks who don't know, he was the chairman of the Belo Corporation. He ran the Dallas Morning News, WFAA television, and the former Belo Corporation. And when I first got here, I came up from Houston, and you talk about Houston or Dallas tearing down everything and putting the tree where they want it. Houston would just scrape everything and do that. But Dallas and Houston are similar in some respects, except for one here. I noticed when I first got here, and everyone was talking about it at WFAA, that Robert Deckard was really into beautifying downtown Dallas. And one of the things he helped do was for surface lots to make sure they were landscaped and had fences or had some type of decorative thing around it, so it's not just a basic boring surface lot that you might have people wander in and out of. I thought that was pretty interesting, but that seems like it was almost the one of the founding stones of all this thing.
Yeah, well, it definitely transformed. Belo Corp had the prettiest parking lots around all of downtown. They were really beautiful. And that was certainly a core value, to make sure that beauty was part of downtown, the downtown experience. And you also feel safer, I think, in those environments. And that's one of the premises we've taken into our park work. For instance, we like wide sidewalks, if at all possible. Now, Harwood Street is part of a historic district, very narrow sidewalks because the buildings, these old buildings, are right up on the sidewalk practically. But if you go to the majority of parks that we have designed and developed for the city, they have very large, wide sidewalks.
And what are the wide sidewalks? What sort of feeling does that convey?
Well, I think it's that safety when you're walking down the street and, some of our aggressive drivers or whatnot, right. You feel like, okay, I'm not right on the edge here. I'm not living on the edge. I'm not taking my life in my hands. And I think that's been the whole issue of how do we get people out on the street? They need to feel safe if they're walking around downtown.
So these four priority parks, we've kind of talked about how they make Dallas more marketable, how it's 20 acres of new parkland in the past 20 years. There are health benefits to all this as well. You've been around Dallas for a hot minute, and you have the gift of perspective on this. Where do you think Dallas is right now? Where is it 5 years from now once all these things are firmly established?
Well, I think it's gotten to be so vibrant and exciting to be living here, working here, visiting here. And I'm talking to people now, like I said, I'm from Austin, who tell me, we don't invite our friends to come visit us here. We want to go up to Dallas and see what everything is going on in Dallas. It's really exciting up there. And that's not anything, 20 years ago, I think you heard.
They also don't want to get stuck on traffic on 35.
Right. But I just think there is this interesting feeling that there's an energy that really is emerging here, and downtown is the place to be. If you really like that urban feel, and you want to have your Texas version of a New York or a Boston, come downtown, because now you can see and do everything. Our arts district, adds tremendous value to what we have to offer here, and that's one of the things. Not to take you down a rabbit hole, but Carpenter Park has got a piece of art that we have reinstalled in the park that is the city's one of the most valuable pieces it owns behind the Henry Moore sculpture on City Hall Plaza, but it's done by Robert Irwin. And it ran north-south on the former Carpenter Plaza, and people drove through it essentially and they just thought it was a metal wall. It's a piece of sculpture that the artist reimagined. We made new pieces for him that were reinstalled, and it now runs east-west. And he is in his 90s, and he has never done this in his entire career. So the Nasher, for instance, is holding an event, a symposium on Robert Irwin on April 30th. And here's a piece of sculpture in a park, for goodness sakes, that is driving Nasher programming, as an example.
Wow. The Nasher Sculpture Center.
Nasher Sculpture Center. Yeah, April 30th we'll have this.
Wow.
We actually then commissioned Quinn Matthews to do a documentary, a history of this piece of art. And it's going to make its premiere at the USA Film Festival here in Dallas on April 20th. So something that is not, most people wouldn't even assume is park related, and yet it's a really core amenity or it's a driver for this park. And I think that this park will bring art lovers, for instance, to it, who might not have normally gone to a park.
Something it jumped out at me when you said, hey, we're not in the land acquisition business anymore. We've done all the work. We've got these 4 parks where they need to be. Looking down the road, maybe this is long term, but where do you think the next great Dallas Parks project will be, and what should it be?
You trying to buy land before and try to sell us back to them? Or
yes, because I have a long-term retirement plan, and I'd be happy to include you in on the bid.
That's an interesting question, and I would be giving you my opinion. Sure. I would tell you that, but you look at a community like Uptown. My in-laws used to live in Uptown, and my mother-in-law tried desperately to get another park built in Uptown. There was no land for it. Well, let's take the Cedars, jump across 30. You've got the original City Park, Old City Park, which is Dallas Heritage Village, a combination of. That area is really prime for development, and green space would be a key driver, I think, in terms of development in that area. Something like that. So look at neighborhoods that surround and work your way out. My understanding is Hunt is going to, when they do, a redevelopment of a property over on the opposite side, right near Victory, they're going to make sure there's a park that anchors that development. So I think you're going to see this happening more as developers have watched what's happened in the core, and they see the value, and they see, especially coming out of COVID. I think we all learned, that COVID, we want outdoor spaces to be in, whether it's just for food and beverage and fun, or we actually want to go out and exercise, or we just need to connect with nature. And when you're in a very urban environment that is so concrete heavy, trees, green space, plants, gardens, the fact that when we opened Pacific Plaza and I was walking through one day, and the Turk's cap, this plant had these beautiful kind of flambe orange blooms, there was hummingbirds flying in the Turk's cap in Pacific Plaza in downtown Dallas. We have, monarch butterflies at Carpenter the other day. These are things we would not have seen 10 years ago. It just wouldn't have happened 5 years. Well, I think with Civic Garden, when we first opened that's when I first kind of thought, oh, some of this is actually could be possible. Wow. And now I know it's possible. And that, to me, is about quality of life. Yeah. And we need these connections to nature, and it's real easy to lose them when we're surrounded by hardscape and concrete, skyscrapers. But we can bring butterflies and hummingbirds into downtown, then, I mean, that's pretty transformational.
That's impressive. My last question for you, Amy, is none of this would be done without a public-private partnership. And I would presume that not all city halls are as fortunate to have the type of organization that you guys are to say, hey, we can come in and help out. How does Dallas rank in that? What do other cities need to watch? And is anyone really ahead of Dallas?
Well, we certainly know that when we have talked with some other cities, DDI often has conversations with other cities, and
DDI is Downtown Dallas.
Yeah, Downtown Dallas Inc. I'm sorry,
which I'm mistaken you guys.
One of our partners,
yeah.
And they have often get calls from cities that say, tell us how you're doing X and Y and Z. And so when they have questions about parks, we've come in and talked to them. Our model is hard to replicate because we were a private foundation that had an endowment to start with, so we had cash resources. We didn't have to start from ground zero to raise capital. So that's, I think, what's allowed us to go at this pace, that if we had been starting from ground zero and said, oh gosh, this is a $90 million program, soup to nuts, because we've got to buy, there were 2 parks that still had to be purchased. Yes, we had to acquire a lot of land. Then you have to pay designers, which is not cheap. Your construction costs in a built environment, much higher than if you're out in the suburbs. So we could go and build one of these parks in Frisco for a fraction of the cost we can build in the city of downtown Dallas, because we have all sorts of things buried underground. Harwood, we've found tanks, we found basements, cisterns, all sorts of things.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. So there, all
That's
of these
a whole
parks.
Other story.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's under Harwood Park.
And the environmental remediation and abatements you have to do, you're not doing that in farmland. So there are certain things like that make this very challenging. And I feel like, we were fortunate to have those resources that could jumpstart this. And then we've had some other private partners come on along and want to be, partner with us too. So we've brought more people to the party, which has been great. We still have a ways to go. But I do think that our particular public-private partnership may not be as easily replicable unless somebody in another city, there is a foundation there that says, you know what, we've got this endowment. We really care about green space and the environment. We're going to take a cue from what Dallas has done, and we're going to follow suit. But I still think there's lessons we can all learn from each other. You may know about Trust for Public Land has a park score index, and they annually, analyze all sorts of data on this. And so out of 100 cities, Dallas right now comes in right at 50. So we're right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
I think that the good news about this is that we were really high on their equity score as a whole city, the city of Dallas. We were very low on amenities. So it meant we've invested in having green space, but maybe we haven't put in some of the amenities that our citizens want to see.
And by amenities,
things like
pickleball,
yeah,
okay.
Basketball, water features,
Gotcha.
play spray grounds, playscapes, different kinds of swings. I mean, all of these kind of amenities that might draw someone to a park, or just a quiet green space that you can sit in an environment and be contemplative, in a moment that you wouldn't have thought that you could find that in this particular environment. So we're hopefully adding, the parks that we're building are adding more amenities, and maybe our score will go up a little bit.
And I noticed in that Trust for Public Land report, I looked at that the other day, and Dallas is ahead of, I think, parkland per capita of like Austin and San Antonio, but behind Houston.
Yes, which
and so
surprised
Houston has
me.
Significantly a lot. Is that because of the bayou down there running through town, or what is that?
I don't know the answer to that, Jason, because they actually passed a tax on themselves for more parkland. And so the whole city of Houston did this. So I don't know if it's just things are in progress, but they have a really great park system. But I am surprised by that.
Yeah.
But their land mass is so much larger, too.
Yeah.
We have to remember that they annexed everything, right? And so they're so much bigger than we are. We're surrounded by suburbs.
Right.
So that could be it. Maybe it's just the geographic scope that they have to cover. I don't know the answer to that, but it is surprising.
Huh?
For sure.
All right, Amy Meadows from Parks for Downtown Dallas, Inc. I got it right this time, right?
Yeah.
Sorry about that earlier.
That's
I apologize.
No, wait. You just said Downtown Dallas Inc. again.
I said ink. I need to pull ink out of this thing.
Parks for Downtown Dallas.
No ink. There's no incorporation.
No, yeah.
There's no incorporated. Parks for Downtown Dallas. You guys have a great website. You can read all about the 4 priority parks. There's a lot of great stuff on there. There's videos on there. A lot of good information. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate
thanks
that.
for having us.
Yeah, it was great, and can't wait to go see Carpenter Park. It's going to be the largest
Park in downtown until Clyde Warren builds their expansion.
New expansion.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
expansion, then they'll eclipse it. But right now it's 5.6 contiguous acres. Come
That's
and
great.
check it out. You'll be amazed. Stand on the top of the hill.
I'm convinced one day Clyde Warren will be all the way up to Mockingbird.
Maybe, right?
Who knows?
And for the record, Chris Lawrence finished his beer a lot faster than me here.
And I'll say
I'm
this
trying to put some
a shandy
space
is
in
not
between
so
the
bad.
end of the podcast and the beginning of my work shift.
Exactly. Hey, thanks again. We appreciate it. Chris, thanks for being here, man. We appreciate that. Shout out to Pegasus City Brewery for having us at their tap room in downtown Dallas, too. Thanks for listening to Y'all Ticks. We'll see you again next week.